Hello, this is arplenoon, also known as Phoenix, here for another entry of the Bridge Jumpers. This time it is Chapter 3. If you would like to read this chapter for yourself, you can go to archiveofourown.org or AO3 and search for arplenoon. All of my Undertale AU fanfictions will be there. This will also be a casual reading, so this is just a one-off, reading it for the first time, no editing, so I might say some things wrong and correct myself, etc. So I've got my water with me, and I've got some ice cream to help clear my throat. The ice cream won't clear my throat, what the water will, so anyway, let's get started. Chapter 3. Summary. Pro wants answers from the skeleton who saved him, Disbelief Papyrus. However, instead of asking, he goes to steal Skep's credentials. This leads him to learning about Malady Sands' research and seeking FlowerGlitch Papyrus as a bodyguard, a.k.a. G. And that's my alarm. Let me turn that off. Central Hospital stood as one of the largest locations in the Omega timeline. After all, it had become the primary drop point for refugees into this dimension. If Prodigal was going to find Skep, it would be there, but he didn't want anyone to know his intentions. A little over a week, he stalked the entrances and exits of the large facility. He spotted Skep once, but it seemed the Papyrus used a teleportation spell to get to wherever he was staying. So encountering him at his home was out. Instead, Prodigal had to figure out a way to get close to him within the hospital. Given how large and busy it was, slipping between the crowd and having a cover story of visiting a sick friend helped him to avoid suspicion. And while he wasn't able to track Skep all the time, he was able to overhear some passwords and credentials with extreme patience. His opportunity came one morning in the public cafeteria. Skep entered side by side with a large ice wolf wearing the same white armor. Prodigal peeked from over his shoulder as the wolf and Skep were talking and sat down their bags. Distraction came as a color sand slipped over to chat, both of them heading to the coffee machine. The ice wolf blinked, looked around, then quickly skipped off to the bathroom, leaving the bags unguarded. Prodigal couldn't have asked for better timing. Walking over, he slipped his arm into Skep's bag, quickly grabbing two different objects that were vaguely phone-shaped, then teleported off into one of the locked data rooms. One of the objects was Skep's phone, but the other was a small black book. He narrowed his eyes, flipping it open to behold dozens of sketches, notes about Sands, Papyruses, the multiverse, and the ramblings of a madman. This couldn't have been written by Skep. Despite how compelling the book was, Prodigal slipped it into his pocket for now and proceeded to link the phone to the computer to hack. He needed to have it return to Skep quickly to avoid being tracked to him. It didn't take long for Prodigal to get in, and only a few minutes to steal his credentials and whatever records he had stored on the device. Finishing with this task, Prodigal teleported back to the cafeteria and around the corner. Oh, where is it? He heard Skep searching in desperation. Walking casually, Prodigal saw the Papyrus searching in and around the table with the Ice Wolf and Color's help. Color was dialing the number. As quickly as he could, Prodigal dropped the device next to the coffee machine and proceeded to make a latte. The phone buzzed on the counter. Pro pretended he just noticed it. That's funny. I don't remember taking it out of... started Skep, as he came to pick it up, exchanging a glance with Prodigal. But Prodigal kept a neutral expression. Do I know you? Skep tilted a brow. I don't know, do you? Prodigal couldn't help the spite in his tone. Skep must have sensed the hostility as he narrowed his eye sockets and left Prodigal be. Pro sipped the latte, trying not to cringe at its poor quality. Prodigal spent another week back at the apartment picking through the records he'd stolen. He used Skep's login information before a breach could be detected and read the various field reports from Core's team. "So, how's the job searching going?" Diva commented. "Alright, I guess," he said, sitting on the couch as Spooky purred in his lap. Good luck, bro." Whenever his eyes got tired of looking at his laptop screen, he glanced at the book. At first he dismissed it as gibberish, but then, why did Skep have it? Why had he kept it so close? Curiosity took over as Prodigal dove deeper into the writings of the sands called Malady. Slowly, it all seemed to make sense. So, error was the cause of all this, the various universes uniting and colliding. His own brother Sans was never much of a troublemaker, but Mother Gaster, that's incorrect, that should be Mother River, fully believed in his ability of foresight and the various versions of other worlds. Prodigal searched the database for this Malady Sans. Deceased, accidental, anti-void, about 6 months prior. Prodigal pulled the laptop nearly to his face as he took in every detail of Skep's report. Escape the multiverse? Is that even possible? Sacrifice half the soul? Taken by a creature called the Witness. It seemed like an interesting idea, but Prodigal didn't want to lose half his soul. He didn't want to lose more of his identity than he already had. But he searched the data for papyruses that were lone survivors from their worlds. One of the first entries that came through was for a skeleton named G. FlowerGlitch, 23 years old, 7 foot tall. Prodigal blushed. It didn't take much digging to find an address, a phone number. He could just call him. Prodigal stared at the image of the fell papyrus with buttercups growing out of his eye socket, head and neck. It was endearing. He mulled over the idea of contacting the G, but what would he even say? That he'd stolen information from one of Core's top men? Found the possibility of leaving this world where thousands of versions of them existed? That he needed another papyrus' soul for his idea? It was stupid. Anyone would think he was crazy. And besides, this was another fell papyrus. He learned quickly that those labeled fell were stereotyped into being more aggressive than usual. Even so, he couldn't take his mind off the idea. He read Skep's report about G once, twice, dozens of times in the same night, then several more over the next couple of days. Due to a childhood throat injury, G preferred to speak in sign language. His world was a derivative of a flowerfell AU, except that the FlowerGlitch infected anything that it came in contact. The FlowerGlitch infected anything that came in contact with Flowey. Luckily, the illness wasn't contagious, but G was advised against ever using his found reset ability again. Records indicate he moved out to a rural area about 10 months ago and was working as a farm laborer. Take a bite of my ice cream. I went to a new ice cream store that opened in my city, and they had so many options, and I wasn't sure what to pick. And this lady said, "Oh, we have this combination ice cream called Cookie Monster that has cookies and cream with cookie dough." Well, I assumed it was like a scoop of cookies and cream with a scoop of cookie dough ice cream. And I was like, oh, that sounds delicious. But no, it literally is Cookie Monster. Like, there's barely any cookie dough in it, so I feel like that was a lie. But it's basically like cookies and cream, but the ice cream is blue. And she told me it was vanilla, but it doesn't taste like vanilla. I don't know what this is. Anyway. Let me take another drink of water and we'll get back to it. Overcast, the threat of rain. Still, G stopped by the wild apple tree he had every morning since they'd ripened. Entering the stables, every horse poked their head out from their stall expectantly. He smiled softly, going to greet each beast with an apple and a gentle head pat. He'd spread out bundles of hay before letting each horse out to pasture. They would at least be able to get some walking time before the storm. As he sat to cleaning out each of the stalls, his boss would come to greet him, an Asgore named Wilbert. G had been working in this location for a few months, but according to his new boss, he was the best employee he'd ever had. Never met a monster so natural with horses as you. Oh, here's your tea. G smiled and nodded, taking the tea, hot, unsweet, as he preferred. His phone buzzed in his pocket, which made him jump slightly. He wasn't expecting any messages. G checked the text from the unknown number. You lost your world too. I have work for you and a new purpose, if you're interested. What was this? Prodigal took a taxi out to the park near the small town where G lived. There was a bridge there overstretching a small lake to an island in the middle. Benches lined the edge of the bridge. He hadn't checked the weather and lifted his hood as it started to rain. Taking a seat, Prodigal lit a cigarette that was prepared to wait all day to see if G showed. He hadn't got a text back, nor did he have the nerve to send another. He'd given G the location and time to meet, and part of him knew he had set himself up for failure. Maybe if he gave himself a reason to be angry at this G fellow, he'd stop thinking about him, even if the reason was flimsy. And yet, earlier than expected, another taxi drove up. The tall skeleton emerged. Boots, black jeans, red scarf, black coat. Unlike Prodigal, he had been smart and opened an umbrella before heading out to the bridge. Prodigal had to catch the cigarette from falling from his loose jaw. He already hadn't expected G to show at all. He put the cigarette out with his finger before stuffing it back in his pocket. Shoulders stiffened, Prodigal struggled to find his words as the taller skeleton stopped a few feet away. The moment they took to observe each other stretched longer than it should. You asked for a bodyguard? She broke the silence. Yes, my research is dangerous. I can travel the multiverse, so I need someone to protect me, he said, and tried to sign the words he remembered. G smiled and signed back, balancing the umbrella in his arm. I'm not deaf, you can speak. Can you understand me? Prodigal sighed with relief. G seemed friendly. Yes, I can read sign. You said you were researching something. Are you sure you understood it if I told you what it was? G scoffed. Try me. I'm not a scientist, but I'm not stupid. Well, there's this new creature. It's called a witness? It was discovered by one of Kor's men a few months ago. He paused, doubting himself and being able to explain it well. They exist beyond our level of understanding in the multiverse. I want to contact one. So, you want to talk to a strange creature then? Why do you need me? Because you lost your world too, right? Prodigal hung his head, only to find out it was never a world of its own to begin with. His arms folded behind his back. You wake up to find you're only a copy of someone else. Ji stood quietly a moment, then brought his hands up. I'm listening. Well, these witnesses, they can take us to another world, one that isn't recognizable to what we lost, where we can be original souls again. But there's a price to pay. Half of our souls. We have to die before we can leave this multiverse. So that's why I need your help. If I had another Papyrus with me, maybe the creature can fuse our souls together when we reach the new world. That way we can both be closer to who we are now. A red blush came to over the face of the taller skeleton. That seems a rather intimate request. I don't even know you. Intimate? Prodigal blinked. He had to think about it. Then it dawned on him. He blushed and covered his mouth. No, I didn't mean it like that! G laughed, which came with a slight wheezing sound, only making Prodigal blush more. You can at least buy me dinner first. Ah, this is a disaster! The smaller skeleton collapsed to the ground as if begging forgiveness. Just kill me now! Snickering more and walking over, G set down the umbrella before picking Prodigal off the boardwalk. Pro blushed as G patted off some of the dirt from his coat and jeans and smiled. Don't be dramatic. Still, it's a big request. Let's just start with being a bodyguard first. So, you'll think about it? Prodigal exclaimed. Sure, you're still buying me dinner though. There's a diner not too far away. G turned, grabbing his umbrella, and headed back to the mainland. Jaw agape, Prodigal shook himself before chasing after to walk beside him. I want my ice cream. It kind of tastes like maybe bubble gum. It's not vanilla. Why was he feeling so nervous? Prodigal gripped his knees as he sat across from G in the booth in the diner. G, coffee and pie? Oh, and you brought a friend, said a human waitress with dark hair. G greeted her with a nod and lifted 2 fingers. Coffee and pie for 2. She winked and had the order to them in seconds. Prodigal took in the surroundings, wood panels, tile flooring, religious-themed paintings on the wall. You come here often? G nodded, sipping his coffee. He pointed at the pie next to Prodigal. Pro wasn't particular to pie, but his slice did look good. Gooey peaches tried to escape from a light brown crust, topped with a scoop of vanilla ice cream. Grabbing his fork, he gave it a go, and relieved to find it tasted as good as it looked. Several bites in, he noticed G signing to him. So tell me what you have found about these witnesses. Oh, that. He pulled out the black book and flipped it open. I found this. It's from a sans called Malady, who came from a horror tale variant. Honestly, most of it seems like crazy talk and scribbles. Tried to figure things out, same as we all do, but he went deeper. He defines our multiverse as existing along a centralized reality coil, which is particularly focused and oriented from error sans. As he spoke, Prodigal watched a scrawny bear monster sat himself at the booth behind G, much to the frustration of the waitress. His attention was drawn back to the tall skeleton as he signed. Explains why there's so much sans and papyrus. This is G. Explains why there's so much sanses and papyruses. Prodigal felt his soul flicker with excitement. Oh wow, you do get it. Okay, so the reports say Malady escaped the reality coil. He was dying, and his soul was taken by a witness into another world outside of our multiverse. Taking a bite of the pie, G signed with a fork still between his fingers. How do you know he made it out alive? Oh, Prodigal hung his head, a finger to his teeth. I guess I really don't know. The words that Skep used sounded confident. Wait, you know Skep? Shoulders stiffened, Prodigal searched for an excuse not to reveal how he'd stolen the reports. Yes, he's the one who brought me to the OT. He brought me here too, quarantined with him for several days. I'd been infected with a virus they had to clear, but they couldn't get rid of the flowers. At the very least, they're not contagious. Oh, I see. The waitress came back to refill their coffee. You planning to order some actual food today, Sugars? She said. But we already have dessert. G smiled. I always have my dessert first. If you don't, you'll never have room for it. The club, please, G said aloud. Something about that made Prodigal feel warm in his ribcage. Perhaps he hadn't expected G to be so opinionated and to have a personality different from most fell papyruses. And you, dear? Said the waitress. Oh, I'll have him, Prodigal said dreamily. I mean, I'll have whatever he's having, ma'am. He blushed and covered his mouth. The waitress giggled as she walked off. G glanced away, blushing as he hid half his face in the coffee mug. Prodigal leaned forward, holding his forehead. Sorry. It's okay, G signed. But Prodigal glanced back to the door. A papyrus and sands entered, but not just any random variant. Velswap gold. The category flashed in his mind as he'd been compared to it so many times. Aside from the way they dressed, the two skeletons were a spitting image of himself and his brother. His bones went cold as the sands met his gaze, glowering. His own brother never gave him that expression. Seeing it now made his soul nauseous. She blinked and waved to try to get Prodigal's attention, but as the pair moved away from the door, Pro covered his mouth. Excuse me? And he bolted out of his seat and through the exit. Wait! He heard G call behind him. Prodigal ran off behind the building and into the woods, not sure where he was going or why, but the further he ran, the more committed to his venture he became. The ghost of his brother's face haunted him, his brother and the demon called Error staring down in judgment of his fate. He stumbled into a part of the woods that had been blackened from a fire. The ruins of a house stood crumbling in the rain. There he stumbled and fell to his knees, catching his breath. His bones rattled from trauma and the cold. The tears wouldn't stay as he curled up. What a fool he must have seemed. He could barely keep it together whenever he saw Sans who looked just like... G's footfalls could be heard following behind and coming to a stop. Pro could hear his heavy breathing from the effort he exerted to keep up. Aren't you sick of it, G? Seeing your own face? And the faces of everyone you love belonging to other people? He turned, looking up at him, not bothering to wipe his face. But the tall skeleton only frowned before hiding half his face in his scarf. Prodigal hung his head. I want to be a part of a world where I matter. After all the pain and suffering I've been through, none of it mattered. He summoned the grayed-out calibrate button. After all the torture River put me through to give me this, and it doesn't do anything. It barely did anything when it did light up. Eye sockets widened. G signed. What is that? A scar. Nothing else. Now I'm just debris. G blinked and shook his head. I don't think that about you. Signing, Pro stood, not bothering to wipe off the mud. You said so yourself. You don't know me. I'm worthless, especially in the grand scheme of things. The taller skeleton opened his mouth a little, starting to sign, but instead walked up to pull Pro into a hug. Pro froze. You're not worthless, G's voice growled gently. Pausing, tears grew at the edges of Pro's sockets. After a moment, he leaned his head into G's chest. He hugged him back.